Now we're going to draw the spine joints as well as create a new kind of IK handle that we haven't talked about yet called a spline IK. Alright, let's go ahead and move into our side view here. And let me turn off my grid again. It came on somehow. And we're going to draw 7 joints that go up the spine to the base of the head and then up to the skull. Now, I'm going to purposely, I actually need 8 joints to make this work, but I'm going to purposely only use 7 joints, so later on I can show you how to break the joint chain, add a new joint, and then put the rest together. It's very simple, but I do want to make that part of the training. Alright, let's start off with activating our joint tool, and we'll start down here at the crotch area, and this is going to be our first joint that we draw. Now, this joint is not going to have any points attached to it. This is going to be called the root joint. It's mainly going to be for selecting the entire rig, okay? So it's not, we're not going to attach any joints to it. The next joint that we're going to draw that goes up from there is going to be the hips, and we want to place this kind of strategically. We want to, because we want to have these legs feed into that joint. Okay, so we're going to go from there to the joints. Now we're going to go into the small of the back, so we'll kind of go up in kind of this direction right about, and as you can see I can click and drag wherever I want. I'm just trying to see the best position that's going to give me nice geometry right here so I can bend along there. Okay. The next one will be right here by her rib cage area. Okay. Then we'll do one right here near her armpit. And I'm trying my hardest to kind of keep these spaced evenly. So let's see how many we got here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 5 is going to be right inside of the arm area, like right about there. Okay, 1 at the base of the head, and then 1 at the skull. All right, so let's take a look at how many we got. 8 total. That looks good. So we have 7 actual joints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and rename these guys. We're going to start off with the root. The one above the root is going to be called a hip. And then you can call these either back 1 or lumbar 1, whichever is easier for you. Okay, back 2, back 3. Okay, this one for now we're going to just call this one neck, base head, and then this top one is going to be the skull. All right, so that's our joint setup. Okay, as you can see, it's flowing through the body. Okay, pretty nice. Let's go ahead and get a spline IK handle set up. Now, what's beautiful about a spline IK, especially on curved joints like this, is that it's going to actually create a curve from this point right here to this point right here. There'll be a NURBS curve that will have vertices. Now, as we adjust the vertices, it's going to adjust the spine location. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that. We'll go up to Skeleton, Spline Handle Tool. Okay. Now, very important, we're going to go from this neck joint right here, what we've called neck. Obviously, we're going to need one more joint, so I'm going to come back later and teach you how to do that. And then we're going to go to the hip. Now, not down here. That's the root. Here's the hip. So we're going to go from there to the hip. Now, if you look, nothing fantastic happened. If I get my move tool and I select this, I can't move anything. Okay, even though it has translates, my move tool won't work, and it says down here you cannot move it. So how in the world do you use it? Well, Deep inside of here, if I turn off, I go to Show, Joints, and turn off the joints, there's a curve now, right? And if I adjust that curve, it will adjust those joints. Okay, so what I mean by that, if I right-click and go to Control Vertex and pick one of these Control Vertices and move this back, watch what happens when I go to Show Joints. My back is bent. Perfect. Okay, let me undo that. So we're going to use that as kind of our little edge in creating some controls. Now, I don't want to have to go in there and try to select each one of those curves whenever I'm working. So we're going to create some clusters. All right? And we'll start at the top here. Now, while we're working here, I want to teach you about selection masks. See this little joint handle here? If I turn that off, all of a sudden, I can't select joints. See, I'm selecting, but nothing's happening. I have to actually, I can't even direct select them. I have to come over here and turn this back on. So those are called selection masks. All right, let's frame this up here so we can see what we're working with. All right, I'm going to hit F8 on my keyboard to go into the vertex mode or the component mode, and I have that top vertice selected. I'm going to go up here to Deform, Create Cluster, Option Box, and you notice Relative is turned on. I turned that on myself. If I reset, it's not turned on. Now, what is Relative? Relative allows us to parent the actual cluster handle to the rig, and it won't get double transformations. All right. So that's very important attribute. So we'll go ahead and check that off. We'll hit Create. And there is a little bitty letter C. And that letter C is the cluster handle. Well, I cannot select that little cluster handle with all this other stuff going on. So let me open up my attribute editor, which is this button right here, or you can hit Control A. And in the cluster shape, cluster 1 handle shape node, you have this origin. Well, here's a little trick. If you hold down Control and you click and drag, you can move those clusters out without adjusting the pivot point. Okay, so that moves that cluster back. All right, let's move to the next vertice. We'll go to Deform, Create Cluster. Okay, same kind of deal. I'm going to Control click and move that back. Okay, we got this one right here. Deform, Create Cluster, Control click back to the spine area. And then there's going to be one more vertice down at the end. You can hit G on your keyboard to repeat last command, and then move this one back. All right, so what do I have here? I now have, let me get out of component mode, or you can hit F8. I now have clusters that can do my work for me. Okay, so as you can see, now my pivot points are all kind of messed up. The pivot points are the pivot points of the vertice and not the actual joint itself. So I'm going to fix that next. This one looks good. This is perfect. Actually, it's a little bit off, so we can fix that. I'm going to hit Insert to go to my pivot point. Hold down V, and I'll just snap that right into place. Okay, I'll go to this one. Hold down V. Snap that in. Now, I'm going to skip a joint. Okay, nothing gets snapped to this one. And this guy right here, I'm going to snap to there. And this one is perfect. All right, hit Insert again to get out of that mode. Now, as you see, as I adjust this cluster, I actually get a predictable result. I can see that it's happening about that pivot point. All right, lastly, before we go any further, let's go ahead and take all these pivot points and rename them. So let's do that. Then we'll parent them, and then we'll parent the legs. So let's get these clusters renamed. And I'm going to use some real cryptic names here. You can actually rename stuff right here in the outliner. Just double click on it. This one's going to be cluster neck. I told you they were going to be tricky. All right, cluster neck. Next one's going to be cluster chest. This one will be cluster abs. And then this last one is cluster hip. And that's fine. Last thing we'll do is we'll select all the clusters, shift select the root joint, and hit P to parent. Okay, so now if I pick up the root, the whole back moves. Perfect. And lastly, in this lesson, we're going to take the leg, shift select the hip, parent, take the leg, shift select the hip. Okay, make sure it's the hip. Okay, you should see like a little tailbone, not the root. Okay, so they should go up to the tailbone. Be really careful that it doesn't go down here to the root, or this whole process won't work. All right, so let's see. What do we have here? We can take and move our character, bend them down. We can take clusters, move our character forward or backward. And our hips are working perfect. Everything seems to be working really well. Now, we're going to pick up from here by creating some control objects so we don't have to go in there and try to nitpick these little clusters. We can just pick bigger control objects to make that happen and eventually hide all the stuff we're not going to need.